Trust and Institute Fonse Oand bring you a new set of discursive webinar series called Darshan. One may ask why it is called Darshan. The word Darshan or Darshana or philosophy comes from the Sanskrit word drish, which means to see, to experience, both so integral to the making and viewing of visual art. Darshan also means to behold or be beheld, usually used in the context of the auspicious sight of a deity or holy person. Darshan as a derivative has deeper meaning other than just a simple religious interpretation or a cultural memory. The premise of arts and culture thus rests in the eyes and perception of the viewer, or what I call the spectacle of the conscious. And darshan thus is critical to its growth. For me, darshan also implies an interaction between the spectacle and the viewer. Now, what is Vaisheshika in the school of Indian philosophy? Vaisheshika is one of the 6 schools of Indian philosophy. Like Buddhism, it accepts only 2 reliable means of knowledge, that is, perception and inference. The respective scriptures of Hinduism and Buddhism are considered by them as indisputable and valid means of knowledge. Knowledge and liberation are achievable by a complete understanding of the world of experience, which can be interpreted as karma. All objects in the universe are composed of 5 elements: earth, water, air, fire, and space, except time, and the mind and soul, and God, of course, as guiding principle. Creation and destructions of the universe is a cyclic process. Vaisheshika also marked the beginning of physics in India eventually, and this school was merged with Nyaya school of Indian philosophy. Such interpretation apparently prevailed in the Upanishads. The myths were turned into symbols, and some of them persisted as models and metaphors. The idea of atomicity and other physical ideas given in Vaisheshika are reviewed in light of the central role of the observer. In this webinar, some questions that could be raised include, and these are my questions, which I think this webinar would be able to answer. These questions include: if icons are popularly understood or referred to the holy objects that belongs to the realm of the sacred or the divine, is the articulation of the divine made possible through human feelings and creations? Can there be a comfortable transition from the realm of community-based devotion to desire, or vice versa? Can the idea of desire be observed and perceived through creation of objects? What are the limits of perceptions and inference when it comes to creative approach to arts? Does all work of art defy perceived logic under the inherent creative endeavors? We might find answers in the works of our esteemed panelists today. Our panelists are Willie Cole, Parag Tandal, and Paula Sengupta. And we'll begin with Willie Cole. Welcome, Willie.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Willie Cole is known for his mixed media sculptures that focus on the cultures of West Africa. His upbringing by both his mother and grandmother had had a lasting impact on his work. As his continued use of irons in his sculptures signifies the domestic role of African women. His works are related to contemporary thought, object iconifying, and ritualization, folk culture, utility, design, contemporary art, and mythology. Willie's work represents the atomic construct of any object in relationship to space or spatial contingency. Now, I would like to introduce the webinar with a quotation from today's session with a quotation from none other than Willie Cole himself. Willie Cole has said, "The enshrinement of objects begins with desire. Admiration of objects becomes worship. To use an object excessively is to ritualize it. Ritualization leads to empowerment. To discard a functioning object is sacrilegious. To discard an object with the hope of getting a new one is a sacrifice. To discover a discarded object is to resurrect it. An object resurrected becomes an icon. An icon displayed is a work of art." Willie Cole, please take over. Now it's your turn and you may take 12 minutes. Please begin your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, as I said, it's good to be here. I hope you all can see the screen the way I see it in this moment. As it was stated, my work deals with everyday objects, but taken to a different level. And I thought I'd begin speaking about the steam iron because that was actually the first object that revealed so many things to me. And it's actually the object that led to that quote. So I'll review this chart easily. This chart shows how, in my mind, I evolved the iron from a utilitarian object to a work of art or to an icon. So you see the middle image is that of a steam iron. But I did word association. The steam iron had a black handle. So that took me to Black people who used the iron originally, who were slaves who eventually became just housekeepers or mammies or nannies. So on the left side of the steam iron, you see that image. On the right side, you see the American housewife because she used the iron in the 50s and it was a great tool to have. So that's on the social level. But if you go down one level to the historical level, it shows how the origin of the mammy came from the slave and the origin of the housewife came from suburbia on the right side. If you go down further, you'll see that the slavery was an economical venture. So I have the continent of Africa and the slave ship, but on the right side, slavery was about money. So you see the money bags at the bottom. If you go up to the physical level, you see all the elements that I connect to the steam iron. The middle one is the iron from the periodic table, which I believe was 20 protons and 30 neutrons. So that's a play on words. Iron is iron is iron is iron. Left of that, you see water because the steam iron needs water. And on the right, you see fire because once the iron is hot, it's fire. Above that, on a spiritual level, you see the West African god of iron in the middle, named Ogun. On the left side, you see the West African goddess of water, who is Nyaya. And on the right side, you see the West African god of fire or thunder, who is Shango. So from the iron, I was able to get all of these different perspectives and perceptions, and that allowed me to make art based on things from the steam iron. So just have a couple examples of that. During that time, I made things I made prints, sculptures, and paintings, everything about the iron for probably 15 years. but it evolved to prints after a while. This is actually the most recent iron imagery thing here. So I took the exploded view of the steam iron, but I attempted to match each shape with an African icon. So if you see how this is the water container from the steam iron became this mask here. The hot plate from the steam iron became a mask here, et cetera, et cetera. The cord here became a whip on this side. So I think you get the idea. So I just took those shapes, found things that fit those shapes, that spoke about the history of Africans or the African diaspora. This piece is a similar concept. This is actually based on a graphic of the Brooks slave ship, which is one of the most iconic images of a slave ship, at least in American history books. I actually found an image in one of my childhood books that inspired this piece. But here I used the steam iron sole plate, which is the hot part of the iron, to represent two options. It either represents the way that the prisoners are laid out in the ship, or represents the tribes that were on the ship. So each steam iron brand becomes a tribal name. In the United States, we have Sunbeam Irons, we have Procter & Silex, we have Black & Decker. So these various sole plates around the iron board represent those brands or those tribes. And the iron board itself represents the slave ship. It's really a pretty close graphic replication of the Brooks slave ship. So I just have those iron things there as a foundation because actually I am known for my irons more than anything else. But in recent years, I began to do work with plastic water bottles. And I'll show you this firehouse was converted into an installation made from water bottles. So here you see I have the two chandeliers hung already. And it ends up being a room that is 2 rooms that are 15 by 15 feet with a chandelier in each room. And these are the various kinds of chandeliers that I've made. The one on the right was my first chandelier. It's called the Buddha chandelier. It actually came to me in a dream. And that could be a longer webinar by itself talking about that project, but it came to me in a dream and it led to me making lots more chandeliers, often as commissions. And just, I don't know if it's my luck or my fate, but the city of Newark has water issues. So now not only am I making water bottle sculpture inspired by the bottle, but I'm now inspired by the events going on around me. This shows one of the water distribution sites in the city of Newark. The residents are allowed to come there and get 3 or 4 cases of water. The issues with lead in the pipes. This is happening in a lot of big cities in the US currently. And this is a city that my life began in, so it's real special to me. The city has commissioned me to work with many schools because the water problem has led to a water bottle problem. You know, the leftovers, the plastic. So here you see these kids at this school, the Pingree School, beginning a water bottle project. They collect all the bottles, they wash the bottles, then they drill holes in the bottles. And after 4 days, we constructed this giant out of the bottles. He's 30 feet tall, and he's about 10,000 bottles. It becomes very much like, almost like a tribal project because there's so many people involved. And you don't know what it looks like until it's over, you know, just building one bottle at a time. I like to say that I work the same way that nature does. Nature replicates a single cell to make a larger object. And that's what I do with bottles, but I also do it with shoes. So here you can see a mask made from high heel shoes. I don't have any sketches, but I think of the shoe as a very loaded object. In the US, I would say guitars, guns, and shoes are loaded objects. And I'm sure there are others that you might have on your own list. But for me, it was about making masks from shoes. And with no sketches, it's like having a jigsaw puzzle without a box and no picture on a box. So you just play with them all day until you get a result, which is what I do. So you can see here, 3 results here. Mask made from shoes. And the masks are displayed on posts so people can get behind them and have an experience beyond just looking, which has become important in my art world today because of social media. Maybe we'll call it a selfie moment. But I also make singular objects out of shoes that I then cast into bronze. So this is a 6-foot-tall bronze piece made from shoes. And this series is called Mother and Child. Done a lot of mother and childs over the years. I guess it has to do with, it's just a popular thing in art. You go back to European art, classical art, and you'll see paintings titled Mother and Child. But my aesthetic is inspired by African art. So it takes on this look. So this is the baby's face here. She has a nice little frown at the bottom there. And it's all about perception because I didn't make a lot of changes to create the mother. Her face is just a shoe with the laces removed. But the ability to see that derives from patience and the act of not knowing, not assuming that what you see is what you see, but being open for something else. It's pretty much how I approach the creative process, is to just let it flow. This is another mother and child here. You can see the baby on the back here in this enlargement here. And this one is very recent. This is probably just 2 weeks ago. This is the leather shoe version, but it's currently at the foundry being enlarged to a 6-foot version. And this, my final image is just a return to the water bottles. As I said, they are group projects. So here you can see me working with a group to make a 30-foot diameter, I don't know what it was. At first I thought it was an umbrella, then I thought it was a mandala, but it ended up 30 feet just on the ceiling. So maybe it's a ceiling awning or something like that. You also see in the background a piece made with the hot steam iron, scorches on wood on the right side there. And those are the images that I'll share with you today. Should I say more?
Yeah, that's it, Willie. Can you hear me, Willie?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay. Thank you, Willie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
DHIREN, you can start your video.
Yeah.
DHIREN, you're visible now.
Okay, and the next, thank you, Willie, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Next we have questions and answer sessions will follow later on after all the 3 panelists have done their bit. Now we have Parag Tandil. Parag Tandil is a Mumbai-based sculptor who has moved to being a cultural practitioner through archivals of his own Koliwala community. Some of his public art projects include Tandil Fund of Archives, Pop-up Museum of Fisher Folk, Mumbai, Encounters Daily Ration Public Art Project. His works are related to contemporary thought knowledge through observation of what has become invisible and community archivals for tangible cultural presentation. The usage of metaphors and models are prominent in his work. Introducing Parag with a quotation from himself, Parag says, "My childhood and rooted landscape is connected to water bodies and estuaries. I began to wonder, can this be art? How can I materialize this into tangible forms? What can be my art? What do I want to talk about? What is my current story? Do I have a story? And why is Indian art flooded with human figures and Western ideologies? These are interesting questions that Parag is asking. Now let's hear from Parag himself on what he has to say on his own work. Over to you, Parag.
Thank you, DHIREN. Am I audible?
Yes, Parag. Go on.
So we'll start from my first solo, that is Pregnant Room. And this is about migration. So I am from Mumbai, and I am native of Mumbai. I'm from Koli community. So how I see migration in my land is that there was a floor in VT station, the popular named VT station of Mumbai. Since it was built, it has people walking on the floor of the station. There were concaves because of walking. So I juxtaposed the idea in my first solo, and I made this huge 200 square feet of floor, which is made out of wood, natural rubber, and polymer. So you can walk on it. It's very interactive kind of floor, and it has pain, but when you start walking, some people feel pain, some people feel they are enjoying. So we'll come to the next project. Next is Pregnant Room 3. This is from second solo, and the idea emerged from like I was going to my studio, and my studio is nearby fishing wharf, that is fishing village. So one guy, fisherman guy was coming with this net, fishing net, which was aged by acid in the water because of pollutants. So I bought this net from him, and I restored it with this silicone rubber, which was modeled in clay and then casted in silicone. I will go for detail. So I would have stitched the net with fishing net only, but I thought, why not make metaphorical, a direct representation of skin which is burned.
Hello, Parag. Can I interrupt you? I think your screen is not shared yet.
Screen is not shared?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
So I think you need to go back, share your screen, and then maybe you can start again.
Okay. Escape.
You can do a roundup, quick roundup.
Okay. Share screen. Okay. Okay, now you can see?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go back to the first slide and do a quick roundup then. Play from the start.
Sorry. I lost 2 minutes.
It's okay.
So we'll begin with floor. So I'm from Koli community, and I am native from Bombay. So this is the floor which is inspired by migration of others, I feel. So this is the floor inspired from the VT station, which was degraded and had a concaves. So I just juxtaposed that idea in the gallery. This is my first solo, the Pregnant Room, and the work is made out of wood and natural rubber and polymer. This is 200 square feet. You can walk on it. This is interactive work, and because of walking, it had got blister. That was the idea. it's about degradation. And so we move to next work, Pregnant Room 3. So one day I was just walking around, going to my studio, and I saw a fisherman carrying fishing net, which was etched because of pollutants in the water body. That is our river creek, which is nearby my home. So I thought, why not mend it? So I mend it with silicone rubber. I modeled it, the part which was lost, I modeled it properly with clay modeling and casted it in silicone rubber. And I feel like it gives the feeling of a skin kind of thing which has got blistered. This is from my second solo in Pandol Art Gallery, Mumbai. So coming to the next thing is, these are the extinct forms. So since my childhood, I have seen lot of effluents, colors in water bodies. So these are memories kind of from memories of colors from my childhood. And these forms you see are protozoas and planktons from the ocean. It's resin. And trap 1, this is about bleeding waters. You know, fishermen since past few decades, they are complaining about we are using shampoo and other things. Right now we are using lot of sanitizer, like everybody is using sanitizer and hand wash, which is flowing into the water bodies. So I just, earlier it was, but it is relevant in this present situation also, bleeding waters. This project is about migration only. Again, this is colorblind series. Earlier, we as a community, since prehistoric, we were worshipping ocean, few mother goddesses and moon only. But way migration happened, we also adapted the cultures, various cultures, Brahminical and many other pujas. But we were not believing, we were believing in nature only. So these are the colors. The title is Color Blind. It's about color politics and many other things. Autospolospia series, the coast is clear. These are the drawing series I am doing since 2018. So I use more, I see fish daily, so I usually use those forms only, mostly water and water-based. These are in pencil, ink, and on archival paper. So coming to the public art project, which for which I am famous for. I like working with people. So एक बगल में चांद, एक बगल में होगा, एक बगल में चांद होगा, एक बगल में रोटियां. This is a multidisciplinary dialogue, and we'll just see one video of mummified fish. These are original mummified fish. So this is the last final outcome of the work. So how it happened with public. We together made this. This was a performance project. We'll move ahead. So there are few women fishing from fishing community who have shifted their occupation to the rice roti making. So there is huge demand in Bombay for restaurants for rice rotis. So I collaborated with them and asked them to work with me, and we came up with a competition of dry fish recipes and largest roti competition. In that, it was, so these are the women's. They are with they have come with their recipes. These are the older recipes, which these recipes you don't get in restaurant. Even in Bombay, you don't get these recipes. These are home cooked breakfast recipes. There are few recipes which have disappeared also. So these are hand manuscript. We made a manuscript of handwritten dry fish recipes. These are, and I did some drawings. So this is the only one page. There are total 11 to 12 pages. Then they did a performance of mummification as emotion, a loss of something. Something is dead. Because of that, they have shifted their occupation. Like there is too much pollution and oceans. There are desert ocean created in seas where no fish is available. Bleaching is happening because of too much effluents. These are the women's, and I asked them to make a roti, and then I did some sculptures out of it. Let's come to Tandil Fund of Archives. The Tandil Fund of Archives was started because there was too much information which is not documented, because being artist, I can see and what was happening, that I could not bring those things into the white cube space. So I started this, I and my wife, Kadambari Kohli, started this project, and we are documenting photographs, songs. There isn't, slowly I'll come to, we'll see the first photographs.
Parag, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah. I'll finish. So these are the photographs from the Kohli community. This is by one photographer, Dattatray Thanekar. This is the space where we have displayed. This is the open art gallery of Municipal Corporation. Cycle 2's estuaries of vanning sounds. So this was, the earlier was in Chendani fishing village. This was in Vitava fishing wharf, that is fishing village. So this project was about dictionary and word bank. So we asked people to develop, bring words from their repository, because Chenni Kolivada fishing has lost its language. That is my Kolivada. We don't speak Koli language, but this Kolivada is far from 3 kilometers or something, just 3, and they still speak. So these are the words. There are a lot of 200 to 400 words we have got, and people had written meanings also in Marathi and English also. So if somebody comes, he actually we have given the paper and he used to write. Then we invited 2 shahirs. These are the folk arts, Koli community. You know, the Koli community songs are very famous. This is Damodar Vitavkar. He also had given few songs. Then she is Dhawlarin, that is a woman.
Parag, you have 1 minute.
Yeah. This is Pundali Pathare. Then there were many people who write songs. They have shared this in museum. These songs were there, and this is again we came up with fishing recipes, fish recipes competition, and we asked them to write that in their our native language. So it was very fun kind of competition. These are the recipes. There were 16 total recipes. So these are the artisanal fishing objects, and these were shared by local fishermen. They came to us. We want to put this in museum, pop-up museum. So there are 12 different kind of artisanal and means traditional fishing. So this was the site, and we had displayed. So I'll end with this video. So there was one film screening also of related to fishing problems. This is from Anand Patwardhan's film. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Parag. Very interesting work by Parag. Thank you, Parag, once again. And now we move on. Now we have Dr. Paula Sengupta. Dr. Paula Sengupta is an artist, academic, curator, and prolific art writer. She is currently serving as professor and head of the Department of Graphics Printmaking at the Faculty of Visual Arts, Rabindra Bharati, University, Calcutta. Vaisheshika school has a parallel with Buddhism in that both accept only two reliable means of knowledge, that is perception and inference. Since Dr. Paula's body of work that is derived from the Tibetan Buddhist way of life, her works will be truly apt for this session. For many years, her works have encapsulated the cultural displacement of Tibetans in India through her project Into Exile. Her work makes it possible for technology to flirt freely with Tibetan craft traditions with exuberant results. Over to you, Paula. You can take over.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so hi, everyone. I'm going to share with you a sort of long-standing, ongoing project that I've been working on for some years now, which deals with the Tibetan community in exile. And like Parag's work, it pertains to a threatened community and a threatened way of life. And what it has actually led to in the process is just a second. Okay, so what it has led to in the process is a sort of museumization of a community that is sort of supposedly it's threatened, but it's not extinct. And you know, like museums, what I've attempted to create in this project is a sort of museum of ethnography of a threatened community. But at the same time, because it is a living community, I'm not entirely certain that it should be museumized in the first place. Why I chose to do this, to share this particular project with you today is because I understand that, the Vaisheshika school of Hindu philosophy, as well as Buddhism, they sort of have the closest parallels in you know, their ways of thinking. And I understand that, that both these schools accept only two reliable means to knowledge. And these are perception and inference. And their respective scriptures are considered by them as indisputable and valid means to knowledge. knowledge and liberation are achievable by a complete understanding of the world of experience. And I interpret the world of experience as karma, which I have found from my interactions with the Tibetan Buddhists that karma is sort of the single most important principle by which they lead their lives. It seems almost as if, you know, there are very, very stoic people. And it is amazing the fortitude that they display in the face of the fact that they have lost everything in life. But they rebuild their lives in wherever it is that they are in exile with a sort of a kind of stoic determination. And you know, what they do is they believe that this is their karma, and you know, they must live out that cycle. That is part of the wheel of life that they must necessarily live out. So I'm going to try to share this project with you. So the Dalai Lama in 1959, in the month of March, came into exile to India. And as a result of this, there are over 120,000 refugees who followed him into exile from Tibet. In addition to these refugees who followed him, there are also 2 generations of Tibetans who are born in exile, who have never actually been in Tibet. And it is only through keeping somehow their language, their culture, their food, their costumes, their ways of living, all of which constitutes their culture. It is somehow through all of this that they attempt to keep the idea of Tibet alive in the hearts, in the hearts of the refugees who came from there, as well as in the hearts of those who have never known Tibet, younger generations who have never actually known Tibet. The reason I grew interested in all of this is because my husband is a trekker and a photographer, and I traveled with him in the Himalayas, and we have traveled extensively in the Indian Himalayas, in the higher reaches bordering Tibet, in Nepal, in Bhutan. And all of this has generated this interest in me. And for many, many years, I collected objects just because I'm a collector of objects. And I also collected stories that were sort of, you know, crafts, textiles, and so on. Until I went to McLeodganj, which is a hilltop in India, out of where the Dalai Lama lives and out of where the Tibetan government in exile actually functions. And it was then that it occurred to me that there is a whole country functioning out of a hilltop in India. And this was really difficult to reconcile to. And it was then that these stories of exile that I had been collecting for so long actually started to fall into place for me, and this project came about. I'm going to share with you the works from the project very quickly. So this particular work is called Pema's Story, or The Flight of the Ducks. It is a book, and it's a book of 8 panels. And I'm just sharing a few panels with you. It parallels the story of Pema Dhargyal, who's a security guard in the Dalai Lama's residence in McLeodganj, with the flight of the Brahmini or the ruddy-shelled ducks in the high reaches of the Himalayas. And I have paralleled Pema's journey with the flight of the ducks who migrate every year. And likewise, Pema also migrated in the same sort of direction as the ducks. And so this is 8 panels. It's an interactive work where you know, you have these 8 the 8 lucky signs from Tibetan Buddhism that are symbolic of the Buddha himself. And you can pull these panels in and out and actually look at the work. So one of the things I attempted to do was to create a museum. So in McLeodganj, there is something called the Norbulinka Institute, which is modeled on the Norbulinka Palace in Lhasa, which used to be the summer palace of the Dalai Lamas. And the Norbulinka Institute in McLeodganj is set up as an institution for the preservation of Tibetan language and cultural heritage. And housed within the Norbulinka Institute is something called the Losel Doll Museum, which is a beautiful little museum where through diorama displays, sort of colonial diorama displays, there are miniature models of all the provinces of Tibet and people and their costumes and lifestyles and so on, conserved within these recreated within these diorama displays. So I've always had a liking for dolls, and I tried to create dioramas of my own and dolls of my own. These dolls that you see are about 12 inches high. And this particular set, again, is about Pema's journey and contains, so Pema's journey is superimposed on the diorama itself, along with maps that track his movements. And within this are two costumes that are simulating traditional Tibetan costume. The materials that I choose are very sort of significant choices because I'm using prayer flags, Tibetan handmade paper, silk scarves or khadas, which are used to show reverence to deities or holy people or respected people. And so these are the true traditional costumes, which progressively, with as Mao Zedong's army advanced into Tibet, and the Sinicization of Tibet gradually occurred, what happened is that the people were gradually put in the blue Mao suits, and the cultural sort of annexation of Tibet gradually began to take place. And this is the his and hers Mao suit. And these dolls are internally lit. This is another pair of dolls, which, and this work parallels directly the Dalai Lama's escape from Tibet with Pema's flight. And they both come from the district of Amdo in Tibet, which is sort of its northernmost province. And they were both yak herdsmen. And even though, while one is a humble security guard and the other is the Dalai Lama, but their aspirations are actually not so different, as are their losses. And this particular work is, again, this is an interactive work where you can actually turn the wheel that you can see the handles, and you can here are the handles, and you can actually turn the wheel while you are viewing the work and perform the act of circumambulation that is so peculiar to the Buddhist process of prayer and meditation. And this is the diorama. This is the diorama itself. The four sides of the diorama. The male doll made of corn fiber paper, the khada or silk scarf, rice papers, yak hair, and so on. This is the female doll. And I will share now with you a book which is called The Monkey and the Dog. And this so this is a book. The story was narrated by a pair of Tibetan women who had escaped into exile. And what you need to watch for in this book is this blue cloud, which you will see gradually growing in prominence. So these two women came from the village of Toyanchotanga, and it was nestled in a valley in Tibet. And every year, you can see the yak herdsmen coming across the high passes. And every year in the summer months, they would set up a market in the village. And yak herdsmen would come from across the passes to trade their wares. And it was a very simple way of life that was based on bartering, pulses, cloth, salt, etc. Salt was actually the crux of the trade in Tibet. And you can see the blue cloud growing. Yes, DHIREN?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, sure. And so this is the market, and you can gradually see the blue cloud growing. And one day, the two men in uniform, you know, the blue uniform of Mao Zedong's army, two men arrived on horseback and brought with them a monkey and a dog in a cage. And they got the monkey and the dog to plow a field, and they called the villagers gather around so the villagers at first thought this was for entertainment, but then they realized that it is not normal for a monkey and a dog to plow a field. And of course, soon enough, the entire, you know, a whole contingent of soldiers arrived in the village and took over the village, and everybody was put in the blue Mao suits, and life in the village was never the same again. So the monkey and the dog got transferred to a set of prayer wheels. This is a set of automated prayer wheels that turn on their own. And you can actually, these wheels turn on their own, and you can also circumambulate the work to sort of simulate the process of praying and circumambulating the monastery that is typical of Buddhism. So then I kind of went on to actually create libraries and museums of exile. And in McLeodganj, there is a library that actually contains scriptures from all the 4 provinces of Tibet. And these, you know, so here in a library room in a gallery, I actually put up stories of exile that I had gathered from refugees. And what you see in the central line here is the salt trek, which was the backbone of the Tibetan economy. Also here are a set of objects that, you know, are sort of interactive objects that you can pull out, and they have, again, the 8 Tibetan lucky signs, which are sort of the Tibetan way of leading life, and these costumes. And this is the Museum of Exile itself, the entire installation. And then I went on to make a library of exile, which contains in manuscript boxes stories from the 4 provinces of Tibet. And this is the reading room itself. And that's one of the manuscript boxes. And so people can actually come and read these stories of exile in the reading room. It is, again, an interactive work. The last work I'll share with you is it's called The Plane of Aspiration, and I'm just running a video quickly. So this is a set, again, an interactive work. You'll see the viewer at the end actually pulling these, what are called pankhas, which are fans, very typical of colonial India, or colonial tropical countries. You see them a lot. And each of these are sort of embroideries and applique on silk, and each of these is actually representative of a Buddhist sacred site. And all of these sites I have visited in one way or another. Some of these are, you know, they are living sites. Some are architectural, you know, monuments, and so on. So, so the plane of aspiration is sort of what I encourage the viewer to do is metaphorically travel with me across these geographical sites, many of which are very, very contested sites highly contested religious sites or sites of pilgrimage in one way or another. So thank you. DHIREN, I'm done.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you so much. Thank you, Paula, and all the panelists. Now we move on to Q&A session. And the first question I have is from...
DHIREN, can you start your video?
Yeah, can you hear me? But
yes, I can hear you. Your video is not on.
Okay, the first question that is being asked to all the panelists, but with specific reference to Willy's work. This is from Helen Frederick. Helen Frederick quotes Sharat Maharaj in an interview with Michael Birnbaum.
Can I just correct that? That's Amita Bhatt's question.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. The name of the... Okay, this is from Amita Bhatt, right? Yes. Sharat Maharaj in an interview with Michael Birnbaum said, my starting point is more pagan, Hindu and Buddhist, or rather the school of Indian philosophy called Nyaya Vaisheshika, which starts from the notion of difference, of ever-changing multiplicity rather than recuperable oneness. I am hesitant before the monotheistic malady of oneness and intolerance it unleashes. At the conference, there was constant talk of overcoming differences, which is understandable, especially in the light of 9/11. But what sameness or oneness is intended? My view is that contemporary culture and visual art practices on their more fruitful side should be seen as productions of difference as heterogenesis. The challenge of a modern notion of culture and ethics of tolerance is how to live with heterogeneity and plurality. I would love to hear from Willy Cole and other comment on that, especially given our current politics in America and elsewhere. Willy, can you get the question?
Not quite. I heard a long statement, but I didn't quite get a question out of it. So is he asking?
Can you unmute Amita Bhatt and she can possibly target her own question in a smaller sort of way?
Yeah, I'll just do that.
Please do, please.
Amita, you can direct your question.
I've unmuted her.
She's still on?
Hi, Amita. Yeah. Amita is unable to unmute. I think it's a complex question that she's asking in the Vaisheshika and Nyaya says, which is the notion of difference or ever-changing multiplicity rather than recuperable oneness. So, you know, she's questioning the monotheistic. I think it's a very, very complex question for the artist to
Yes.
answer, and maybe we can sort of do that peacefully over email later. But you should then move on to the questions that you had framed already.
And also, I, as a moderator, have a few questions to ask the panelists. My first question would be, of course, directed to Willy. Willy, your remarkable usage of religious icons like Jesus Christ, Mother Mary, and Gautama Buddha inside plastic water bottles is truly innovative, at least for me. What actually motivated you to conceptualize this series of work? In the plastic bottles that you had used?
Right. Well, what motivated to make the pieces with the water bottle, it came from a dream. But the first step was that I was asked to do a large exhibition and they had no budget for me. So I tried to think of something that I could do that wouldn't cost a lot of money. And in that meeting, I was drinking a bottle of water. And I noticed that the bottle had all these embossed lines in it, and I was able to turn the bottle into a fish during the meeting. I know it sounds like magic, but it's, I was able to squeeze the bottle like origami and make it into a fish. And then that night I dreamed about a chandelier, and I thought about the phrase during, I think it was during the Franklin D. Roosevelt campaign in the US president. The expression was a fish, a chicken in every pot. And in my dream, it was a Buddha in every bottle. And I think that came into my consciousness because in my life, I have been through so many religious studies. I grew up in a family of ministers. And then after 1960 in the US, everybody was interested in Eastern philosophy and religion. So I went through Islam and through Buddhism and through Christianity. So it all just kind of mixes in my mind together. So that's how those icons come to me.
And Willie, there is one more question from Cheryl Edwards. The question is, how would you describe your work in relationship to your personal self and its relationship to a universal visual language?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Well, I think of myself as the perceptual engineer. I read a book years ago by an author named Wilson Keyes, and he used the term perceptual engineer to describe the advertising industry. So I started to think about that, and I said, well, I am a perceptual engineer because I'm changing the way that people see things. And I think art itself is a universal language, as is music and math. The challenge is that everybody doesn't hear it the same way, but it is always spoken the same way, spoken through objects, playing on memory and perception. Is that an answer, or should I continue?
I think that's okay.
Does that make sense? Okay.
And before we come back to you, Cole, let me go to Parag. Parag, this question is for you. Parag, I think you can hear me, right?
Yeah, you are audible.
Parag, my question to you is there an intent in the overall execution of your work, or why do you think rekindling public memory of lesser known communities are important, particularly in these times?
Can you just make it simple? With
Simple as in simple would be what is the intention behind executing of your work, like particularly your focus on fisher folks of Bombay, So what is your actual intention?
My major intention is that though it is vernacular, it is seen that what a vernacular area is very there is short space to work on, but there is larger space with the ocean communities. Like there isn't any documentation because we were the first who faced colonization. We saw many invasions, because of which what we are now. Also, there are different cultures. There are layers of culture which had been kept on adding since prehistoric time, and there is a huge kind of documentation which has to be done of fishing communities of western coast or eastern coast of India. The major problem with the archives of our community is that there isn't any documentation. Though the earlier 14th century or 15th century or 16th century documentation is there, but what happens is we found it in gazetteers of Portuguese or British, or letters or traders who had exchanged letters. But there are many other problems which are contemporary problems also, which are like ocean pollution is there, because of which our occupation is getting a shift. There is a shift of occupation slowly, which I don't want to be happen. And my community, through my art practice, if I'm doing archiving, it's very difficult because I can't show everything. There is so much. There is vast I can see. That was the thing. I hope the answer is.
Okay, thank you so much, Parag. And this question is from Shanti Norris, and this is directed to Paula. Paula, the question is, the concept of darshan in Hinduism and Buddhism is a unique, profound inner experience upon seeing or viewing someone or something, often a revered spiritual person or idol. How does this relate to your art, and what experience do you hope to induce in a viewer of your artworks?
Hi, Shanti. I hope you're well. Okay, that's an interesting question, and I've, since Linika came up with this very complex series titled Darshan, and then, Vaishesika school and so on. I was trying to understand the word darshan itself. And the word darshan essentially means philosophy. And it comes from the Sanskrit root word drish. And drish means to see or to experience. Both of which I felt, to see and to experience are integral to the making, to both the making as well as the viewing of art itself. And so I think what actually happens is that that we do as artists, we go through a process of seeing, imbibing, and thereafter there is sort of some kind of catharsis that occurs from over a period of time from this way of absorption. And and then we actually make an object, and once you make that object and then you kind of put it out there to display, it undergoes a sort of transformation, and it actually goes on view. It becomes an icon. And I was actually very taken with Willie's the last sort of sentence in his quote, where he talks about objects, where he says that an icon displayed is a work of art. And so, in a certain sense, I would say that that the idea of darshan, the idea which as it's commonly understood, darshan means to be either to behold or to be beheld, one or the other. And so the viewing, once a work of art is out there on display, it sort of the roles of artist, who is the maker, and viewer become sort of akin to the experience of darshan. The artwork is out there for the viewer to behold. It's asking to be beheld. So in that sense, I think the term darshan actually extends, I would say, to the viewing of art as a whole. And in many senses, I feel that for an artist to make art is a very elevating or a very meditative experience. And in fact, when I've gone to places like, say, the Ajanta caves, and I've seen those frescoes in Ajanta, I've often wondered that why would any sane person go into the jungles there and spend years together in isolation, making those incredible frescoes. But it is a complete devotion to one's maker to be able to do that. It is the path to God. You know, everybody's path to God is not the same, and I think, and everybody's God is not the same either. And so I think in that sense, even the making of art, just as a viewing of art, it's a very, very spiritual and elevating and meditative experience in my view.
Thank you, Paula. And we have one last question. And since most of the questions are directed to Willie, can you hear me?
Here, I'm here, yes.
There's one last question for you. And this question is coming from Chandrima Bhattacharya. And she is asking, Willie Cole, is iron also a metaphor for iron chains of slavery?
Yes, iron is every iron reference that exists. You know, I'm like a kind of a word guy. So every word to me has several meanings. Iron is I, Ron, if my name was Ron. Iron is iron. Iron is my uncle whose name was Iron. Iron is my great grandmother who made her living all her life ironing clothes. Iron is the element. Iron is the attitude. Iron is Iron Man from the movies. Iron is everything. As my chart displayed in the beginning, all those things that I got out of the iron allowed me to make work about the iron for 15 years. And I could continue that, but I just felt like switching to shoes for a few years.
Thank you, Willie.
Thank you.
And I think with this question, there are hardly any questions coming now. I think with this question, we don't have much time. I think we'll end the session. But before we end, a quick, almost kind of a recap of what our panelists have said. Willie Cole's work, as we have seen, that it represents contemporary thought that includes iconifying objects and ritualization of folk culture, and the use of water bottles in creating objects of desire is to be experienced and not just viewed. His work also represents the atomic construct of any object in relationship to space and, of course, or spatial contingency. And Parag Tandel's work is related to contemporary thought process, thought knowledge through observation of when one becomes invisible through his archival works, making intangible objects to tangible cultural representations. The usage of metaphors and models are prominent in his work. The intent of overall execution of his work is not just strident, but also speaks volumes about creative approach to community-based issues. And Paula's work, last but not least, represent memories and object as inherited legacy. The use of metaphors and models in her work is truly significant. Her works truly reflects the interplay of perception with that of inference through the construction of visual narratives. The narratives have a seamless flow that captures not only the travails of exile or being exiled, but also inherent strength of human spirit. Thank you, each and every one of you, for participating in this webinar. And I hope all of you will come back to join the Darshan series of webinar brought to you by Kala Chaupal Trust and the French Institute, India. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.